This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting close to 800 stations on Pacifica and NPR and low-power FM and college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks, Dish Network, Channel 9415, Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on Link TV, Channel 375 of DirecTV. And we are also video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. You can get full transcripts of every show there. You can also follow us on Twitter, sign up at democracynow.org, and our headlines are available there in Spanish. I'm Amy Goodman. Well, energy, healthcare, agriculture, climate change, global outbreaks like swine flu. What do all these topics have in common? Food. That's right. None of these issues can really be tackled without addressing some of the fundamental problems of the food system and the American diet. Well, my next guest is one of the leading writers and thinkers in this country on food. Michael Pollan's a professor of science and environmental journalism at University of California, Berkeley, author of several books about food, including The Botany of Desire, The Omnivore's Dilemma, and his latest, In Defense of Food, An Eater's Manifesto, which just came out in paperback. Michael Pollan joins me now in our Firehouse studio for the rest of the hour. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy.
Well, it's good to have you with us. Let's start with, well, the latest news over the last month, swine flu. How is that connected to industrialized agriculture?
Well, we don't know for sure yet. We're still kind of investigating. But the best knowledge we have is that this outbreak came from a very large industrial pork operation, pork confinement operation, where, you know, tens of thousands of pigs live in filth and close contact. And this was in Mexico. And, you know, it's very interesting. Last year, 18 months ago, the Pew Commission on Animal Agriculture released a report calling attention to the public health risks of the way we're raising pork and other meat in this country. And they actually predicted in that report, they said the way you're raising pigs in America today creates a perfect environment for the generation of new flu pandemics. Basically because once you get that mutation, which sooner or later is about to happen, it very quickly, you have so many different, so much genetic material coming together, so concentrated, and then so many pigs can catch it, and that this is a, you know, we've created these petri dishes for new diseases, and here we go.
And what has been the industry response?
Oh, the industry response and the media response, by and large, is not to pay attention to that part of the story. We haven't gotten a lot of investigation of, well, exactly how did these things evolve, and how did these conditions contribute to it. The other angle, too, is that, you know, as we bring any pressure to bear on American animal agriculture, the tendency is going to be for it to move to Mexico. And indeed, that appears to be the case here, that these are American corporations who have, to escape any kind of environmental regulation, have moved their confinement animal operations south of the border. Explain
how these animal operations work.
Well, a pig confinement operation is a pretty hellish place. They are, you know, tens of thousands of animals kept jammed together. The animals are so close together that they have to snip their tails off because the animals are so neurotic. I mean, pigs are very intelligent. They're smarter than dogs, that they will nip at each other's tails. They've been weaned so early that they have this sucking desire, and so they take it out on the tails of the animal right in front of them. So they snip the tails off, not to stop the procedure, but to make it so painful that animals will avoid having their tails bitten, just to make them raw and painful. They administer antibiotics to these animals on a regular basis because they could not survive without them. And the waste goes down directly below the animals into this giant cesspool that's flushed 2 or 3 times a day out. And, I mean, they're just, you know, they're incubators for disease. The sows remain in crates their whole lives so they can be conveniently inseminated, and they have their babies right there in their crates. You know, to go to one of these places is to stop eating industrial pork, basically. I mean, if we could see into this industrial meat production, it would change the way most of us eat.
It's amazing because the whole coverage, it seems, of swine flu is to be afraid of human beings coming over the border, that they're the main problem here.
Yeah. Now, it is not contracted by eating the pork. That doesn't, you know, seem to be a problem. And some countries have taken that tack, used this to keep out American pork. But that link hasn't been made.
Can you talk about corporations in other ways, like Monsanto talking about the sustainability of genetically modified foods?
Yeah, Monsanto is very much on the attack right now, pushing its products, particularly in Africa, and making the case that the most sustainable agriculture will be intensive production on the land base we have. The argument is that there's only so much arable land in the world. We have 10 billion people on the way, and that the only way to feed them is to get more productivity over the land we have, to further intensify agriculture using their genetically modified seeds. And the word sustainable is never far from their lips, and they have this amazing ad campaign. Two things are notable about it. One is that the language of sustainability and the critique of industrial food is being picked up by some of the major players within industrial food, either as an effort to co-opt the rhetoric or simply confuse the consumer and the citizen. The other thing is that it's very interesting that Monsanto should be arguing that it has the key to improving productivity. If indeed what we need to do is improve productivity, don't look at genetically modified crops. They have never succeeded in raising productivity. That's not what they do. If you look at it, the Union of Concerned Scientists just issued a report looking at the 20-year history of these crops, and what they have found is that basically the real gains in yield for American crops, for world crops, has been through conventional breeding. Genetic modification has, with one tiny exception, BT corn used in years of very high infestation of European corn borers, has not increased productivity at all. That's not what they're good at. What they're good at is creating products that allow farmers to expand their monocultures, because it takes less management. So if indeed we need to go where Monsanto says, there are better technologies than theirs.
What about companies boasting that they use real sugar, like that's a health claim?
Well, you know, it's very, very interesting. Since this book came out where I argue don't buy high fructose corn syrup and don't buy products with more than 5 ingredients, suddenly the industry is, you know, they're so clever. I have to hand it to them. But now they're arguing that their products are simpler, and there's new Häagen-Dazs 5, which is a 5-ingredient Häagen-Dazs product. You know, it's still ice cream. Ice cream's wonderful, but we shouldn't treat it as health food because it now has only 5 ingredients. Frito-Lay is
our big effect.
Well, but I don't know if it's for the better. I mean, I
Frito-Lay?
think Frito-Lay potato chips now is arguing that they're local. Now, you have to remember, any product is local somewhere, right? This food doesn't come from Mars. But to think that Frito-Lay is a local potato chip is really a stretch. So. And on the high fructose corn syrup thing, now that you've got Snapple and soon to be Coca-Cola making a virtue of the fact that they contain real sugar, no high fructose corn syrup, what that is an implicit health claim for sugar. And that is an incredible achievement on the part of industry, to convince us that getting off of high fructose corn syrup has made their products healthier. It has done no such thing. Biologically, there's no difference between high fructose corn syrup and sugar.
Well, explain why you were going after high fructose corn syrup.
Well, my argument about high fructose corn syrup and why you should avoid it is a marker of a highly processed food. I'm just trying to help people when they're going through the supermarket. The main thing you want to avoid is processing. Extreme processing. And high fructose corn syrup, I mean, think about it. Do you know anyone who cooks with high fructose corn syrup? It's not an ingredient you'll find in a home pantry. It's a tool of food science. My problem with it is its ubiquity through the food system. You have high fructose corn syrup showing up where sugar has never been, in bread, in pickles, in mayonnaise, and relish, and all these products, that they basically have found that if you sweeten anything, we will buy more of it. High fructose corn syrup is a very convenient, cheap ingredient because we subsidize the corn from which it's made. But to boast about your product not having high fructose corn syrup as being some kind of virtue is really stretching it. And I think what we see here is another example of the food industry's ingenuity in taking any critique of industrial food and turning it into the next marketing strategy. It's a lot like the low-fat campaign, which began as a government critique of food, beginning with George McGovern in the 70s saying we should eat less red meat because of heart disease. Whatever you think of the science of that, which turns out not to have been that good, it was a well-meaning campaign to improve the American diet. Industry came back and re-engineered the whole food system to have less fat in it and no fat in it. And that campaign sold a lot more food. And in fact, since that campaign, we've been eating about 300 more calories a day, and we're a lot fatter. So you can't you just can't underestimate their ability to turn any critique into a way to sell food. So I've had to update my rules. And with all this new marketing based on these ideas, my new suggestion is if you want to avoid all this, simply don't buy any food you've ever seen advertised. 94% of ad budgets for food go to processed food. I mean, the broccoli growers don't have money for ad budgets. So the real food is not being advertised, and that's really all you need to know.
Michael Pollan, the Food and Drug Administration is slapping General Mills with a warning over its claim that Cheerios is clinically proven to help lower cholesterol. They say it makes it a drug under federal law.
Yeah, well, good for them. I mean, you know, the FDA has been so lax in, and the reason you see this proliferation of bogus health claims all through the supermarket has basically been the FDA has been hands off for a decade. And to see them tighten a little bit and make these companies prove these health claims. You know, another piece of advice from In Defense of Food is